our host for our next session is Cheryl, and the next session is Bridging and Inspiring Neuro and Physiological Diversity. So Cheryl is going to be working with two presenters. We have Angela from Peay State University. Oh, you're muted right now, Angela. So
Peay University.
Austin Peay, thank you. And we have Matt. Let's see, I see Matt's here. There we go. Video is on from University of Central Florida. So with that, I'm going to go away. I will be here. I'm watching very intently and interested. But Cheryl will be hosting this session on Bridging and Inspiring Neuro and Physiological Diversity. Thank you all for this session. Looking forward to it.
Thanks, Nick. Okay, so we're going to start with Angela. You're up first.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen for a PowerPoint. Let's see. Okay, so can everyone see my screen and hear me? Okay, awesome. So this presentation really quickly is just going to go over some teaching methods and some things to consider when you are working with an inclusive group of students. You may or may not have heard the term neurodivergent has been like a hot keyword recently. And so this is just a catch-all term that refers to students who are diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, ADHD, dyslexia, dyscalculia, or any other number of learning disabilities or conditions. And at least for myself, when I was doing this research, one fact that really stood out to me is that within the United States, 80% of students who are diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder do not complete their college degree. And so there's definitely, while many countries have made leaps and bounds in increasing that inclusiveness in their higher education, there's still a lot of work that we can do. And part of it is with these students, often their personalities and the ways in which they learn come into conflict with how we have traditionally taught students for years and years. So some of the common traits of neurodivergent students, they can be very shy. And so even when they need help, they won't ask questions in the classroom. They can easily become overstimulated or frustrated if they do not get the content right away, or if they don't get the answer right away. And I've also noticed a aversion to taking notes amongst this population. And again, this can be either due to a learning disability or just a personal preference, how they've been learning for previous years. And so, but again, this is not to say, this is a problem. We can use this to our advantage to better adapt our methods in our classrooms. One thing I've noticed with our university, and we have services on campus that notify professors, the student needs certain accommodations. Often those accommodations don't quite get to the reason why the student has trouble accessing the information. So even if you give them, let's say, a PDF form of the textbook, if they just have a really hard time reading a screen or just reading in general, then even if you're giving them that PDF form, it doesn't really help them. I included a picture here of our animation lab, and one thing that I really liked when I came here was that they have these large TV screens on various places in the wall around the lab, so that no matter where the students are sitting, they usually have a very close view of what I'm doing. And so even if a student is really shy and they kind of want to hide in the back of the classroom, they still have access to the content. And then also just, developing more our educational tools, trying to being able to identify more individualized accommodations for the students based on the needs that they tell us about. And so a couple examples of these methods that I've used over the past year, one is gamification. So trying to make learning a game. So bring in set challenges and rewards. Candy always gets the students excited. I also make sure when I have larger projects, I physically schedule in the various works in progress and the steps of that assignment within the LMS or the learning management system, so that the students see on their calendar, oh, I need to have this done by this date, this done by this date to be on track. And that helps them to see how they can take a large task and break it down. And the other method that I've noticed that has helped a lot with my discussions with these students are targeted questions. So another common trait among neurodivergent students and people is something called masking, where they will often just say or do or behave how they think you want them to behave. So very often I'll have students where if I ask them in class, do you have any questions? And they'll say, no, I get it, I understand, just because they think that's the answer I want to hear. Whereas if you ask a more targeted question, for example, can you tell me in your own words what you believe you need to turn in on Friday, right? Then that takes away the opportunity for them to like quickly mask and end the conversation. They actually have to give a more direct response. A few things that I noticed, again, that didn't work with the students. And again, some of these were accommodations that were required. So I have it second, but first off is the tutorial videos. So if you record a really long lecture and upload it and provide it to the student as part of an accommodation, that still might not help them, because if it's such a long video with huge chunks of information, they get easily overwhelmed and then they don't finish it or they avoid watching it. And so utilizing YouTube chapters, so if you upload it on YouTube, you can create the little chapters for it that they can click around and see what the content is at various points in the video, or again, break up that longer video into shorter ones. For students who had difficulty writing notes during lecture, when I would speak with them, often it was because they had trouble switching between the task of watching what I was doing and then writing the notes. And so I made sure that they connected with the disability services and use a note-taking software, so that while they're watching me do the presentation in class, the software is taking the notes, and then later, like after the presentation or when they're home, they can then review those notes and change them or rephrase them how they need to. The last thing that my students really struggled with was reading screens. And so in the past, I've always felt that, oh, I put all the information online on the learning management system, it's there, students have it, great. But I realized that many students still struggle with processing that information because it's on a screen. And so there's several fonts available that help neurodivergent people with reading, where it helps them to focus, or it makes the letters more distinct from each other. And a couple of those are the Open Dyslexic font, the Atkinson Hyperlegible font, and the Bionic Reading font. And just so you know, so the font that this PowerPoint is in the Atkinson hyperlegible font. And so it's basically just developed so that each of the letters are really clearly different from each other. There's no double letters. So yeah, it's just, I feel that there's a lot more research and studying and a lot more conversation that we need to have between educators and students and disability services if you have them on your campuses, because I've seen that often, these just the default accommodations that are being given to the students, it's not really preparing them, and it's not making them confident enough to learn. And then references.
Angela, so yeah, we're a little over time here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, so Matt is going to be up next, and then we'll do some questions afterwards.
Just rethinking, kind of building off of what Angela ended with there, but just rethinking how we approach the classroom. And a lot of what I'm going to speak about in the next 5 minutes is absolutely going to revolve around that. And so to start, it's really for me about creating moments, not just things. And for our students, if we think back to when we were students, education, right? We remember the moments, we remember the interactions. We don't necessarily remember the grades we got or the score we had or the even the artifact we even may have made. And so what I do in my research and my teaching is I work with a nonprofit called Limitless Solutions. And at Limitless, we create moments by providing and inspiring children with disabilities with technology like bionic arms and working on interactive video games for children as well who have disabilities. So one of the first kind of starting points was Limitless many years ago met with Robert Downey Jr. and we presented a Iron Man prosthetic to this little boy named Alex. And the idea with this was not many people think about the limb difference community and how can we amplify the need for affordable prosthetics and devices for those with limb difference. So Robert helped us really immensely with that. And since then, it's been about 10 years at Limitless. We create bionic arms, we create hands-free wheelchair controllers that use EMG flexing on your temporalis, and we sneak in the vegetables for this learning through educational training games. So this is all done through, I have 50, that number is actually just updated, over 62 undergraduate students from 6 different colleges at the university. So it's a truly multidisciplinary effort in which they create changeable sleeves, they create the electronics, the engineering that go into this. And essentially how our arm works is the child will flex their muscle and they will create a different gesture depending on how hard they flex. We want them to be expressive. We want them to not always have to wear the same prosthetic. If they want their superhero prosthetic, they can wear that. But if they're going for a night on the town or maybe just a late afternoon, because they're mostly under 15, they can go ahead and wear that prosthetic as well. And these are all created with not only just artistic students, but also all types of creative students of different disciplines. Our students have worked with some major partners such as Halo and Ubisoft with Assassin's Creed to provide themed arms. And that's a really big thing in my education, is pairing our students up with industry partners, showing that you can kind of work with the people you aspire to be and find that common good in education. Project Xavier, as I mentioned, is a hands-free wheelchair for ALS patients in which they flex their temporalis muscles. And so what we're doing in education is not only creating moments for our undergrads to help using their skill sets that they learn at UCF, but they're also creating educational opportunities for somebody, in this case with ALS, to get more independence by being able to manipulate a controller to help drive their wheelchair. So it's no longer the days of tests or exams or just make a project and turn it in. It becomes more empowering. And we always say it became so much more than just picking things up at Limitless. Our ultimate goal is to empower others through creative practice. So this is bringing in artists, professionals, healthcare, and this all revolves around visual storytelling. If without visual storytelling, our students wouldn't be able to convey who they are, who they want to be going into industry, but more importantly, who they advocate for and everywhere in between. And this really dials into creating memorable experiences. And I think, what Angie was mentioning before in her lecture, it's empowering our students. It's understanding that environment, and that, even just the spatial awareness of the actual room can make a huge difference. It's sharing a focus on providing a transformative experience. So it's no longer just lectures, assignments, and then some. And our ultimate goal, even at Limitless, is to build in these inclusive spaces and pass that on to learners at UCF that can use their abilities to do good in the world as they progress. And so, I always say our job as educators is to amplify student voices, is to be the microphone, not the voice. And giving them these opportunities, whether it's in the classroom or outside of classroom, is imperative for, in my mind, the betterment of tomorrow. And so we're seeing that our undergrads are going on to work for major game companies. They're going on to create their own accessible technology throughout the world. And most importantly, they're inspiring our bionic kids, the kids who receive the Limitless prosthetics, to really, make impact in their communities themselves. So we have kind of this learning environment with multiple layers. College students, the recipients of the arms, they're learning in their own ways, but they're also teaching others, again, about their experiences using technology. And hopefully, in the end, this brings access and awareness to these underserved communities, like those with ALS and those with limb different communities. So with that said, I think my teaching meter says we're maybe at 5 minutes here,
Right, yeah.
but I'd like to thank everybody, and thanks, Cheryl.
All
Thanks,
right, so I
Angie.
have a few questions for you, and we'll open it up also. So if anyone who's here has a question, they can drop it in the Q&A or in the chat, whichever. But so I'm going to start off with gamification, since both of you work with gamified training or learning methods. It's a powerful tool, for engagement, whether in learning or rehab or rehabilitation. So have you found that game-like structures or interactive elements help students and users overcome barriers to learning or skill development? Either Matt, you want to start since you're on my screen?
Sure. Yeah. So as I mentioned, it's sneaking in the vegetables. It's, it is one of my favorite phrases, because a lot of our students and our recipients, uh, they're so afraid to fail. And with our bionic arm recipients, they would get a device and it wouldn't work on the first time, or they think they were the Incredible Hulk when they were going to crush something like a Terminator. And that's just not how it works. It's just a light touch of a flex of a muscle. So gamification has been imperative to not only provide that experience of, have fun, you can fall in the pit in Mario and still get back up and keep playing, but also that it gives them a slow marathon-esque process to build and develop those skill sets. And yeah, for me, that's the most important thing. And also making gamified experiences that aren't just learning games, or aren't just games for those with accessibility needs. That's overdone. We want them to look like contemporary, modern, like there should be no difference between your EA sports game and your game that teaches bionic arms, and that's our goal.
Excellent. Angie, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, bouncing off something that Matt said, sneaking in the vegetables. I've noticed a lot of times with some of my students, if they're nervous to speak up during class critiques and give their own opinions, often I try to add a game to the critique. So for example, sometimes I'll say, okay, here's the word of the day. So for teaching modeling, I'm like, okay, the word of the day is bevel. And if the whole class, if they say it so many times in a sentence, then the whole class gets candy. And so it helps to make the students feel more comfortable in speaking up and adding in those opinions within the conversation, because now it's not, oh, I'm alone. It's I'm working together with the class for this combined goal.
Excellent, excellent. So a follow-up, I think, you know, do you think, and how would an educator bring in some of these approaches? You know, where would they find resources for adding gamification to their coursework without them having to completely restructure everything they do? You know, Angie, you want to, whichever.
I mean, I was going to say that's part of what I think we need to bring into education and start bringing into the training of our educators, because again, these are things that I've learned over the years, learned from mentors, but I haven't really found any like solid resources outside of my community that really shows like how you can incorporate that. And so that's why I think this is a conversation that, you know, definitely needs to be continued and researched and made bigger so that we can develop those resources and educators will be able to find them.
Yeah, and I think, you know, for me, it's less the tools. It's less the physical. And I hate to say this because we all use software and we love tools and apps and things and buttons. But it's about breaking down silos. A lot of us work in giant universities where we don't talk to other people in other buildings because it's a different department and a different structure. I found if I don't know something, go and ask. If I don't know how to code a game, I'm going down to Cheryl and I'm saying to Faya help, or I'm going to Peter Smith in the games, an interactive media sector, and I'm getting help from them. Don't be afraid to reach out and ask. And most of the partnerships I've gotten that have helped our gamified experience, we ask them what led you to working with us. Most of the times it's no one's ever asked us. And I think that's really important.
It's really funny that you went there because that was kind of my next question, but yeah, I mean, I find that rarely people ask questions to other faculty, and so my question, the next one was, how do you foster collaboration between individuals with different skill sets, and different ways of thinking, and how have you addressed that? Because in my experience, I'm always excited when somebody asks me to collaborate with them. I look forward to that. So what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be brief, and Angie, I'll let you take it. But it's in higher education, we have such the weight of the world on our shoulders sometimes, and it feels like you're all by yourself and you have to do it all alone. And that's just not the case. And so, again, gamification, go find a game designer. If I'm an artist, I'm not the game designer. I am a motion designer, modeler. I go find the subject matter experts, break down those silos. Angie?
Yeah, much of the same. At least when it comes to the students, again, that collaboration has to start with the educators. The students aren't going to step out of their silos if we don't step out of their silos. And so finding ways where perhaps two different classes and two different departments could come together and the students could come together to create a project that, for example, the art students are working on this project for their art class, whereas some engineering students are working on the coding for their class. And so, but again, the students don't have the ability to start that. It has to start from us. And again, it's just asking questions and yeah.
I'm going to go to our Q&A questions that we have from Ryan Ewell, I think is how you pronounce his name. I'm just curious, I think this is directed to Matt. What is the challenges or realities of kids as they grow with the artificial limbs? Do they have to relearn using the limbs, or is it just simply getting a bigger fit?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. So all of the limbs are modular. So I would say they grow, but we reprint or redevelop. We use 3D printing quite extensively in thermoforming, but we rebuild certain parts as they grow. A lot of it comes down to the psychological aspect. Limitless, early on, we want to provide free bionics for children because they cost $50,000 to $100,000. But as we developed over the past 10 years, we also realized a child is perfect the way they are, even with limb difference. they may not always want to wear those devices. So, there are times where we have a student or a patient come in and, is super stoked to go for the first day of school and wear their bionic arm. And then by the mid semester, it's okay if they leave it home. And that's something that came of that as well. So that growth is a great word that you said in that question, because it's not just physical growth, it's that social emotional growth that's happening behind the scenes. And we needed to learn to understand that and say, great, you don't need the arm right now. That's where, ideally where it's cool to be, right? And so but from the actual design side, yes, they can upgrade to bigger parts, and then the muscle flex remains the same. They usually hone that muscle flex from the video games pretty quickly. We kind of assign it as homework in our clinical trials. So thank you.
Thanks, Matt. So the next question I think would be to both of you. Do you see addition of AI in your courses? And then there was like a short follow-up saying an AI agent could be also considered a collaborator.
Angie, feel free.
Yeah, so I actively encourage, especially my upper level students, to think about how they could incorporate AI in their creative process as a tool. I know that as artists, there's a lot of hesitation and concern around AI, but we've seen it in the past with every introduction of a new technology. It never replaces the person. It just changes how the job is done. And so I do encourage students in upper level classes to think about how they can incorporate those tools. I am fairly certain we'll see it incorporated in an animation fairly soon in the programs. There's several different steps, especially like 2D animation, that are very tedious that can easily be automated. In terms of entry-level students, that's when we have the conversation of the ethics of AI, of how I prefer that they don't use it because you're learning these foundations, right? And so we want to make sure that the students understand that the AI isn't to replace the work, it's to enhance the work. And so the students still have to know how to do it themselves in order to use the AI correctly and efficiently.
Yeah, and Colleen, that's great. The AI agent can be a collaborator, right? AI agents are great. I have one in my web course that we all get the email and we all write. It's on the syllabus. Those of us who are educators, we write that too often. But the AI, agents within even certain LMS have been really helpful for me in the classroom, because students don't feel like I have to email the professor if I just can't find it. They can search something, it can pull it up, and they can find exactly where they need to have it. And then concerning AI in general, I always tell my students, there is a very big ethical conversation. Digital citizenship is really important with these students, and we need to, they have to wield the sword appropriately. But the idea is, why and who is their audience? What is their why? Who are they trying to help? What is their outcome? And all of us who are not only educators, but I imagine most in this room right now are practicing industry professionals as well, understand that there will be times where AI is okay to use, and there will be times where it is not. And so those conversations are important, because it's not just to turn it in, it's how it's affecting the person that will interact with it. So if I use AI, and we don't do this, but to develop an arm, it may not work. The physical therapy may be off. I, I never use AI on a person's disability. So I will not use any AI tools to adapt or mislead or misrepresent a disability. But that's digital citizenship. So the fear for me of AI is really a lack of digital citizenship. What Angie, you said, ethics, the understanding that there are all gray areas. It is not just black and white when it comes to AI. But yeah, AI tools can be used very well in the classroom for sure.
Thank you, Matt. I have one more question. I think we have about 4 minutes left. So this one I'm going to direct more to Angie first. But I think both of you actually do this because you work on projects that aim to empower students and users. So what role do you think self-advocacy plays in your work? How can we better equip students and individuals with the tools to advocate for their own needs in their education and beyond?
Yeah, so again, especially when we're looking at traditional students who are coming straight from high school to college, especially if they're neurodivergent, they may not have had the opportunity to self-advocate because they've had their parents or a strong community with their school. And we see, especially, where the student went to school, what resources they had available to them can really impact how much they know about themselves, how they know how to advocate for themselves. And so we really do need to bring in more support into our universities and into our classrooms, and to let students know it's okay to advocate for yourself. It's okay to speak up and say, hey, this isn't working for me. And I think once they've been given that freedom, they will do so.
Yeah, and that builds off of, our job is just to give them the ability to have self-awareness, the ability to give themselves grace, and the ability to fail, and it's okay. Like a C is not an F, to use teacher speak. We all will grin at that because they go, "Oh, I'm done." You're not done. You're okay. But that's giving them the tools, and again, going back to social emotional learning, the tools that they can utilize throughout their whole career, not just at their colleges or in their education. And then when it comes to advocating, providing them access to the resources the university provides, all of us as educators are advocating for 21st century learning needs 21st century spaces. I mean, Cheryl, this firsthand, down at FIA. And so all of these, just teaching the students, again, I mentioned in the last answer, it's not just black and white. It's this gray area that we all navigate together. They are not alone. Your voice is heard, and teach them all those the factors in the gray area, but give them the resources to make those informed decisions is a starting point.
Thank you. I want to thank both Matt and Angie for their wonderful presentations today, and everyone who's been here watching in. I think we're going to be transitioning now to the next panel, so hang around, turning it back over to Nick.